We rushed your husband to the emergency room after a traffic accident.
Suddenly receiving a call from the police, I dropped the coffee cup I was holding. It couldn't be true. Because my husband died 2 years ago when he fell into the sea. There were even witnesses. Someone must be impersonating my husband. To find out who and why someone would do such a thing, I headed to the hospital. When I visited the emergency room, I saw the pale profile of a man lying on a bed. No way, this can't be happening. I almost cried out in shock and covered my mouth with my hand. Oh, honey. It was unmistakably my husband. I am Annabelle, a 32-year-old company employee. I am raising my 4-year-old daughter alone. My husband, Tony, was supposed to have died 2 years ago. I was told that he fell into the sea and lost his life while working overseas. When I first received the news, I hope it's a case of mistaken identity. I wished, but according to the police, there were witnesses, so I had to believe it. According to those who saw it, my husband jumped in to save someone who had fallen into the sea, and then he disappeared. At that time, sharks were also seen in the water, and it was believed that the person who fell into the sea and my husband were both eaten by the sharks. My husband was rather timid, and I was surprised that he had the courage to jump into the sea to save someone. The local police conducted multiple searches, but my husband was never found, and only his backpack was found floating in the sea. In his backpack, there were photos of me and our daughter, his wallet, and other items. Tony, who usually told me not to touch his backpack, might have been embarrassed to show that he kept our photos in it. Thinking this, my sorrow over losing my husband grew even deeper. Eventually, I had no choice but to put his backpack in the coffin as a substitute for him and held a formal funeral for closure. Why did you leave us? I was grieving the sudden loss, but I had my daughter left behind. At the time, my 2-year-old daughter didn't understand the meaning of her father's funeral and smiled while sitting on my lap. Her behavior brought tears to the attendees. Poor thing. She doesn't understand that her father has passed away. The venue was filled with whispers and sobbing. After the funeral, I faced my daughter with my best smile, determined not to cry in front of her anymore. And I decided to do my best at work and raising my child alone. 2 years passed. I got used to living without my husband, rushing every morning to get dressed and eat, and it became a routine to greet the smiling photo of my husband with, "Daddy, we're off." I took my daughter to daycare and headed to my office. My parents often told me to come back home, but I wanted to keep the promise I made to my husband before he went overseas. I'll raise our daughter well, even on my own. Since my husband's body was never found, he was legally considered missing, so I couldn't receive survivor's pension, making it financially difficult on my own. But I worked hard for my daughter's sake. Despite being only 4, my daughter helped me with folding laundry and putting away dishes, showing her consideration for me. Living with my kind and honest daughter was poor but very happy. Then one day, I received a sudden call from the police.
We rushed your husband to the emergency room after a traffic accident.
Huh? My husband died 2 years ago.
What?
The shock was so great that I dropped and broke the coffee cup I was holding. What is going on? Confused, I thought someone must be impersonating my husband. To find out who and why someone would do such a thing, I visited the hospital's emergency room, where I saw the pale profile of a man lying on a bed. No way, this can't be happening. I almost cried out in shock and covered my mouth with my hand. Oh, honey. It was unmistakably my husband. How can Tony, who was supposed to be dead, be here in America, alive? Even though I wanted to ask, he lay there unconscious. According to the police, my husband was riding a bicycle when he was hit from behind by a car. A nurse handed me his backpack as I stood there in shock. The backpack was very similar to the one I had placed in his coffin at the funeral. When I looked inside, there was a cell phone, and the home phone number in the address book was ours, which is why the police contacted me. When I opened the cell phone, I saw frequent messages exchanged with an unfamiliar woman. This woman might know about these past 2 years. I decided to call the number. I'm sorry to bother you, but do you know someone named Tony Garner? Who? I don't know anyone by that name. Why are you calling from this number? When I explained that I was using the cell phone of a man who was in a bicycle accident and carried a red and black backpack, the person on the other end of the line became quite agitated. What? This phone number belongs to my husband. He always carries a red and black backpack. But my husband's name is Andrew Diaz. Had he been living under a false name for the past 2 years? Moreover, the woman called him her husband. What is going on? I was increasingly confused. If he was alive, why hadn't he come back to me? Why was he with another woman? The more I thought about it, the less I understood. The woman said she would come to the hospital immediately. 30 minutes later, she arrived and clung to my husband's bedside, crying out, "Andrew, Andrew, hang in there." I watched in a daze. Her voice was so loud that a nurse came in and explained that he had undergone surgery for a complicated leg fracture and was still under anesthesia, so he wouldn't wake up for a while. I'm so glad you're safe. The woman, relieved, wiped her tears and then looked at me suspiciously. By the way, who are you? Are you a friend of his? I took a deep breath and looked back at her. Sorry, but that man is my husband. What? Don't joke about such things. I wish it were a joke. She stood up and approached me aggressively. We have a child together. How can you say such terrible things when he's unconscious? Get out. She grabbed my shoulders and tried to push me out of the room. From her earnest expression, I felt she knew nothing either. I'm shocked too. So please, calm down and listen to me. When I showed her a photo of our family taken 2 years ago, she was shocked and agitated, but she eventually calmed down and told me her story. Her name was Bella. A very beautiful, fair-skinned 24-year-old woman. Apparently, she met my husband on a ship during a heartbroken trip overseas after a college breakup. She was comforted by him and became attracted to him, and he confessed that he fell in love with her at first sight. But he never mentioned being married. Bella continued, looking very confused. My husband told her that no matter how much he worked, all his earnings were taken by his parents, so he fled overseas. To avoid being found by his parents, he moved into Bella's apartment when they returned to America. He said once he paid off the debts his parents saddled him with, he would marry me officially. So, we didn't register our marriage, but we intended to eventually. She had been completely deceived by Tony. Thinking back, I remembered my husband's deceitful and irresponsible side. During these 2 years, thinking he was dead, only the good memories came back to me due to my sense of loss. But my husband was originally irresponsible, and he had cheated and lied to me before we got married. I shared my story from 2 years ago with Bella, who seemed equally bewildered. What on earth was he thinking? We looked at each other. I suddenly remembered and took out the notebook I had seen in his backpack. When I opened it, there was something unbelievable written inside. In the meeting room rather than my husband's hospital room, the nurse came to inform us. Your husband has woken up. When we returned to the hospital room, my husband was groaning in pain from his leg. Honey, I'm so glad you're okay. You were in a traffic accident.
Ah, Bella. You came. I remember now. I was on my bike, and suddenly I was airborne.
Upon waking up to see his young wife nearby, my husband seemed relieved. Bella, quite the actress, played the role of the caring wife well.
Have you been by my side the whole time?
Of course. It's for my dear husband.
Thank you. I'm glad you're here.
The husband who had abandoned me and our daughter for 2 years was flirting with a younger woman right in front of me. I felt a seething rage and approached to speak up. Oh, I've been here too. My husband widened his eyes in shock, looking as if he'd seen a ghost. For a moment, we stared at each other as if time had stopped.
Annabelle. Why are you here?
The police contacted me. You left our home number registered in your cell phone.
Ah.
My husband's voice cracked completely, revealing his panic. I calmly spoke to him. So, you've become Andrew Diaz. I'm surprised.
That's...
My husband stammered, unable to form words, his face turning pale. Bella also spoke to him coldly. You lied about being single and escaping from your parents? How could you deceive me like this?
No, that wasn't my intention. I fell in love with you at first sight and just wanted to be with you.
My husband tried to make excuses, unaware that the more he spoke, the more his lies were exposed. That's strange. What you wrote in your diary contradicts what you're saying.
What? You read it?
My husband tried to snatch the diary from my hand, but in his condition, he couldn't get it back. I decided to read from it. Work abroad wasn't going well, and I wanted to escape when I met Bella. She seemed to be on a heartbreak trip, and she was easily deceived by my kind words. Her parents seem wealthy. If I stay with her, I can live comfortably. You're the worst.
That's,
Moreover, if I hire a witness to say I died at sea, I can end my marriage without paying alimony or child support. What is this all about? Realizing he couldn't talk his way out, my husband started getting angry.
How dare you read my diary? And I'm injured, you know.
Bella looked at him sadly as he turned red with anger. I can't believe I trusted and was deceived by someone like you. It's truly pathetic.
I'm sorry. But I still want to be with you. I'll divorce my wife.
At that moment, an older couple entered the hospital room. They were Bella's parents.
Why are Bella's parents here?
I called them.
You always interfere.
As my husband tried to insult me, Bella's parents began yelling at him.
How dare you deceive our daughter? We'll sue you for alimony and child support.
They declared and started to leave the room with Bella.
Bella, wait. Please.
I never want to see your face again. Despite my husband's pitiful cries, Bella and her parents left, slamming the door behind them. After a moment of silence, my husband turned to me with a pleading look.
I'm sorry. But I couldn't help it. I met my destined one. Please understand.
Oh, I see. Given the circumstances, it can't be helped. Thinking he had convinced me, my husband brightened up and took my hand.
I knew you'd understand. You're my wife after all. I'll come back to you. I'm sorry for the past 2 years.
Yes, I was lonely. He seemed to think he had smoothly persuaded me. He stroked my hand and smirked. At that moment,
Don't be ridiculous. Do you know what Annabelle has been through? I will never forgive you.
Ha! Your parents too. And my parents? Why are they all here?
in the sudden development of both sets of parents gathering in the hospital room, my husband was left gaping and wide-eyed. Everyone was furious, and it looked like they were about to pounce on him, bedridden as he was.
Annabelle, I'm sorry. Let's start over. Just get them out of here.
My husband, teary-eyed, pleaded for help, but I held back my urge to punch him and coldly told him, "The moment you abandoned me and our daughter, our ties were severed. Starting over is out of the question."
Please don't say that. I'm injured and can't move. I need someone to help me.
You brought this on yourself. We will proceed with the divorce. I will also claim alimony and child support. In reality, I had held a symbolic funeral for him 2 years ago, but we had kept our marriage on paper until the 7-year mark for a missing person declaration. Now, I could properly divorce him and cut all ties.
No way.
Also, I informed the police. The hired witness who claimed you died at sea will be caught too. You should prepare yourself.
I feel sick. Call a doctor, not the police.
Feigning weakness, he began to look pitiful. He had a habit of lying to escape when things didn't go his way.
Take responsibility for your own mess.
My father-in-law shouted at my husband. Even as he continued to look up at me with pleading eyes, I responded with a smile. Thank you for being alive. So, please make sure to pay the alimony and child support. Realizing there was no one left to save him, he covered himself with the blanket and started crying. After that, I officially divorced my husband. His parents paid $30,000 in alimony and $100,000 in child support up front. Bella also reported being deceived to the police. His parents also paid her for his alimony and child support. My husband was arrested and went to jail. When he gets out, he'll have to work hard to repay his parents, watched by strict relatives to prevent escape. It will take him a long time to repay his debts. I moved back to my parents' house and started living happily with my daughter. Now, every morning my daughter says, "Grandpa, Grandma, I'm off to school," and heads to daycare. To protect my daughter's smiling face as she grows, I will continue to do my best. How did you find this story? Please subscribe to my channel. See you in the next video. Alright, there's a reaction. Your license is suspended for drunk driving. After a company party, I was stopped by an unmarked police car and accused of drunk driving. I was in a dire situation with no one on my side, but I managed to escape thanks to a quick-witted move. I'm in my late 40s and work in the transport industry. I can't handle alcohol at all due to my constitution. so I often take on the role of organizer or driver at parties. Even though I can't drink, I enjoy the atmosphere of parties, and I don't mind it at all. Tonight was a rare large party, and I had a great time. I saw off the group going to the after party, settled the bill, and stepped outside. Just as I was about to get in my car, my phone rang. It was a colleague's number, but it was my boss, who had left his phone in the restroom of the restaurant. I went back to the venue to retrieve my boss's phone. He said I could give it to him tomorrow, so I placed both mine and his phone on the passenger seat. I also took off my jacket and threw it on the seat, thinking it might be too warm as I had worn a winter coat. Finally, I headed home, which was a 40-minute drive. After driving for a while, I noticed a white sedan following me. It kept a consistent distance as I drove through the downtown area, the residential area, and then into the countryside. With no oncoming traffic, it was just my car and the white sedan. I started feeling uneasy. Suddenly, red flashing lights appeared in my rearview mirror. I checked and saw the red light on the roof of the car behind me. Oh, an unmarked police car. The car in front, pull over. Almost simultaneously with my mutter, a voice boomed from a loudspeaker. I slowed down and pulled over to the side of the road. While waiting in the driver's seat, two men got out of the sedan, and one of them knocked on my window. "We're the police. We've been watching you from behind." Okay. He quickly showed me something that looked like a badge, but it was closed immediately, and it was dark, so I couldn't see well. I could only make out the police mark. Even though I hadn't done anything wrong, being stopped like this made my heart race. I was glad I hadn't been speeding. Returning from a company party, I hadn't had a drop of alcohol, and I had obeyed the speed limit and traffic signals. I didn't do anything, so why was I stopped? I asked, confused, and one of the officers replied, "People who are drunk driving often try to act innocent. We clearly saw you coming out of a bar." "Yes, I am coming back from a party, but I haven't had a single drink." Sure, that's what all drunk drivers say. "Show us your license." The officers were convinced from the start that I was drunk driving. There was no point in refusing, so I handed over my license obediently. The officers, who seemed to be in their late 20s or early 30s based on their voices, were much younger than me. One officer came closer and held out an alcohol detector. "Here, blow into this." I quietly blew into it. Naturally, no alcohol was detected. The officers huddled together, peeking at the detector, and whispered to each other. "See? I told you I haven't been drinking. I was the driver." "But there's no one else in the car, right?" I dropped everyone off at their destinations after the party. Even as I explained, the officers seemed skeptical. "Oh, really? Let's redo the test." "Why?" "It didn't react just now. The alcohol detector seems to be malfunctioning. Please blow into it again." No matter how many times we do it, the result will be the same. For some reason, they persistently demanded a retest, so I reluctantly agreed. Casually glancing at the other officer, I saw something unbelievable happening behind him. The officer was wiping the breathalyzer with a disinfectant. Breathalyzers aren't cleaned with alcohol-based disinfectants because the alcohol in the disinfectant will trigger a false positive reading. Huh? Something's off about these officers. I thought to myself and quickly came up with a plan. "Excuse me, Can I blow my nose first? Pretending to grab a tissue, I reached into the passenger seat and felt around for my phone, operating it discreetly to avoid detection by the officers. Somehow, I managed to press the record button. Sorry for the wait. Here's the tissue. I pulled out a tissue from the dashboard and pretended to blow my nose. All right, blow into this. Okay. With a bad feeling, I blew into it again. They quickly took it away, not showing me the result. Due to the alcohol from the disinfectant, it seemed to react slightly this time. The officers nodded to each other. All right, your license is suspended for drunk driving. One of the officers said cheerfully. I told you, I haven't been drinking at all. If it reacted just now, it's because of the alcohol in the disinfectant. When I pointed this out, the officers got angry and dropped their polite tone. We're the police and we're confirming it. Are you defying us? He said menacingly. No, I'm not. Then please test me again. I haven't had any alcohol. The test showed positive. You were drunk driving. One of the officers said high-handedly, talking over me. But I didn't back down. And for drunk driving, the suspension is odd, right? Shouldn't it be license cancellation? Stop babbling. Just pay the fine. It's $5,000. A fine, huh? They don't even explain how the fine is calculated. There are two types: driving under the influence and driving while intoxicated. If the alcohol concentration in your breath is 0.15 milligrams or more, it's DUI, resulting in a 90-day suspension. If it's 0.25 milligrams or more, it's DWI, leading to license cancellation. Would the police really make such frequent mistakes with official terminology? Given my job in the transport industry, our company has alcohol detectors. We check for DUI before and after work, so I know the penalties well. Could these guys be fake cops? It dawned on me. If they're fake, going to the police might actually prove my innocence. I had heard that agreeing to voluntarily go with the police can put you at a disadvantage. But if these were imposters, it would be different. I started to smile. Maybe because I wasn't getting my wallet out, one officer got angry and shouted, "Hey, hurry up and hand over the money. Don't defy the police. You'll be arrested for obstruction of justice." All right, let's go. To the police station. I'm not running or hiding. As expected, the officers started to panic. Wait, really? Are you sure? We're letting you off if you pay now. One officer made a money sign with his fingers. Clearly, these were fake cops demanding cash on the spot. I don't carry that much cash. Who does? Then withdraw it from an ATM. How? I asked, and one officer replied, "Drive to a convenience store and withdraw it." I chuckled. Puffed. You're telling me to drive, even though you said I'm drunk driving? Well, just give us what you have now. There was no way these were real cops. Realizing this, I remained calm. Will you give me a receipt for that amount? Huh? A receipt? I've never done anything wrong, so I don't know the procedure. But usually, you get proof of payment, right? When I said this, the officers exchanged glances, cleared their throats, and said, "If you pay what you have now, We'll overlook this. But keep it a secret. Doesn't that seem strange? Are you asking for a bribe? No. Just pay the money without any complaints. I started to find the situation amusing and felt more at ease. But I didn't do anything. If the breathalyzer really showed something, show me the screen. I already turned it off. Then test me again. What? I told you we already tested you. As the argument heated up, I took out my boss's smartphone from the passenger seat. Okay, let's do this. I was glad my own phone was recording. The emergency call option didn't require any passcode. I dialed 110. Hello, is this the police? Please come immediately. I'm in trouble. I'm being falsely accused and asked for money. The location is. At that moment, I was thankful for my job in transportation. I could easily describe my location. Hey, who are you calling? Stop it. The two officers were panicking, but I finished the call. Turning to the officers, I said, I called the police station. This is getting nowhere. Hey, this is bad. What do we do? The officers were visibly shaken. You didn't really call the police, did you? Yes, I did. Aren't you police officers? Why are you so upset if more of your colleagues are coming? As I spoke confidently, for some reason, the officers started to smirk. Well, whatever. We'll figure it out. Yeah, it'll be fine. Within minutes of my call, several police cars arrived with sirens blaring. On the rural road, our two cars, one with a red light on, were easily spotted. Good evening. Two young officers stepped out and greeted them. We received a call. What are you two doing here? What's going on? Are these real police officers? I had suspected they were fake, but they turned out to be real. Of course. We showed you our badges earlier. As I stood there stunned, the young officers grew bolder. We're really going to arrest you for obstruction of official duties. They threatened me, but I stood firm, showing me that earlier didn't count. I couldn't even read your names. It seems there's a dispute here. What happened? A senior officer asked me, while another officer questioned the young ones. Several officers watched from behind. To prevent me from speaking, the young officer raised his voice. This man left a bar in his car. We followed him in an unmarked car, and his behavior was suspicious, so we asked him to stop. When we told him the breathalyzer showed positive, he suddenly started causing a commotion and became violent. That's a lie. I shouted to cut him off, but the young officer kept lying smoothly, making the new officers look at me with suspicion. What's this, a drunk causing trouble? Did you call the police yourself? The new officers seemed to believe the young officer's lies, making me furious. Then test me again. There's no way it'll show anything. I haven't had a drop of alcohol, yet I'm being accused of drunk driving and asked for money right here. When I shouted, the senior officer reacted sharply. Are you saying they asked you for money right now? When the senior officer asked, I responded firmly. That's right. They initially demanded $5,000. When I said I didn't have it, they told me to give all the cash I had. Hey, shut up. Stop saying unnecessary things. I told you to keep it a secret. The young officers were flustered. The senior officer, glancing at them, said, "Anyway, let's test you again. I'm sorry, but could you cooperate?" The result was, of course, negative. "See?" I said triumphantly, not mentioning my recording, and explained everything. The new officers found it hard to believe. "It seems our young officers have caused you trouble. They must have been overzealous. It was a misoperation of the breathalyzer. We'll make sure this never happens again." They tried to appease me and let me go without charges. The young officers remained sullen and silent. I was far from satisfied. I almost became a criminal for drunk driving because of these two officers. I demand an apology. Saying that, I took out my phone, which had been recording the whole time. The image wasn't clear, but the audio was. When they heard the recording, all the officers turned pale. "You secretly recorded us? That's dirty," the young officer yelled, but I firmly replied, "Who's really dirty here? You demanded money even though you're real police officers." The others also initially doubted me, right? If I didn't have this video as evidence, you would have tried to sweep this under the rug, wouldn't you? I won't let this go. I'll take this to court if necessary and demand compensation. Then, the young officers. "What? Don't mess with us. You've got some nerve." They snapped and came at me. In the next moment, several officers restrained them and covered their mouths. "We are truly sorry for this incident. We'll contact you later." Their attitude changed drastically. The senior officer bowed deeply and said, "We'd like to hear more details later. We'll certainly come to apologize. Please keep this confidential." The other officers also apologized in unison. "We're very sorry." I was surprised at their change in attitude but replied, "All right. I expect a sincere response." The senior officer quickly ordered, "Let's go. Follow us in your car." The young officers, cowed by the senior officers, were ushered into the back of a patrol car. Another officer drove the unmarked car, leaving me alone on the dark rural road. Later, their direct supervisor and the deputy chief visited my house to apologize. "Please keep this confidential." They handed me a substantial amount of money. I won't disclose the amount, but it was enough. I learned that the young officers who initially approached me both had fathers who were high-ranking police officials, often covering up their misconduct. They had been exploiting their authority, accusing people of drunk driving to extort money. Thanks to my recording, they couldn't cover it up this time, and the young officers were dismissed for damaging public trust. The incident was resolved, but it became a legendary story at company gatherings. Had my boss not left his phone, I might have returned home earlier and avoided the incident. But it was because his phone was in the passenger seat that I could record and call for help. In any case, I never want to be involved in something like this again. How did you like this story? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.